You gonna be the next Iron Man now?
Well, no, I don't have time. I'm too busy doing your jobs.
What? I'm kidding. Look, keep up the good work.
Because I am going on vacation.
Spider-Man Far From Home has arrived, capping off Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and ushering in some major changes for Peter Parker. And like every MCU film, Far From Home is crammed full of hidden references and callbacks to older movies and the comic book source material. In what is easily the biggest and most welcome surprise in the film, J. Jonah Jameson making his long-awaited MCU debut in the mid-credits sequence. Better still, he's again played by J.K. Simmons, who of course played the original character in the original Sam Raimi trilogy. However, this scene makes it clear that J. Jonah Jameson is no longer a newspaper tycoon, but rather runs the Daily Bugle as an InfoWars-style fake news site, similar to his portrayal in the PlayStation 4 Spider-Man game.
And that's the last word from me, J. Jonah Jameson.
Believe it or not, this isn't the first time Spider-Man has had to deal with his identity going public. In the comics, Peter willingly unmasked himself to show his support for the Superhuman Registration Act during Civil War. That decision wound up costing him dearly, as Aunt May was caught in the crossfire from a vengeful kingpin, and Peter wound up making a deal with Mephisto to save her life. Afterwards, he collaborated with Iron Man, Mr. Fantastic, and Doctor Strange to create a spell to wipe the entire world's memory of his unmasking. Needless to say, we don't expect Far From Home's sequel to quite follow that particular path. Despite introducing 2 brand new Spider-Man suits, Far From Home also manages to feature all 3 of Peter's prior MCU costumes. That includes his original homemade costume, which returns via Mysterio's induced hallucination sequence in Berlin. Peter's shield-designed stealth costume is about function over form, but it also harkens back to a similar costume worn by Spider-Man Noir in the comics and animated movie Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
Wherever I go, the wind follows. And the wind, it smells like rain.
Quentin Beck claims to be from an alternate universe, suggesting the MCU will soon be delving into the concept of the Marvel Multiverse. This turns out to be a ruse, but the Ancient One previously hinted in Doctor Strange that the multiverse actually is a thing in these movies. It's also worth noting that both Earth's designations are callbacks to the comics. Earth 616 is the name of Marvel's classic comic book universe, while Earth 833 is home to Spider UK, a member of the multiverse protecting Captain Britain Corps. The movie reveals that Beck and his team are all jilted ex-Stark employees jealous of Peter's relationship to their late boss and angry that their barf tech was never put to better use. In the process, this allows Peter Billingsley to reprise his role as engineer/Obadiah Stane's punching bag, William Ginter Riva, for the first time in over 11 years. One shot on the plane ride to Europe shows Peter flipping through in-flight videos and passing over an episode of the science documentary series Nova. Now, this may be a flimsy connection, but we'd like to believe Marvel is hinting at the MCU debut of the cosmic superhero Nova. Ned and Betty have a short-lived, amusing relationship during the course of the movie. This seems to be a nod to the comics, where an adult Betty Brant and future Hobgoblin Ned Leeds were actually married for a while. Of course, whether the MCU Ned is meant to be an adaptation of Ned Leeds is still unclear. We still don't know his last name, and in terms of appearance and personality, he shares far more in common with Miles Morales' best friend, Genki. The monsters Beck fights in the movie may be fake, but in the comics, the elementals are very real threats. The versions in the film are even inspired by classic Spidey villains like Hydro Man and Molten Man. Far From Home includes several callbacks to the recent Captain Marvel movie. Fury gets cranky when Peter mentions Carol Danvers' name and also references hidden Kree sleeper cells on Earth. We end up learning why in the post-credits sequence, which reveals that Fury and Maria Hill are actually being impersonated by Carol's old friends, Skrull shapeshifters Talos and Soren, allowing the real Fury to pursue other goals in space. The revelation that Fury is in outer space collaborating with the Skrulls could be a sign that the MCU is building towards the debut of SWORD. This SHIELD offshoot is tasked with protecting Earth from extraterrestrial threats, a problem that's become more and more pressing in the wake of Avengers: Infinity War. Now, we can't help but think of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in the scene where the real Fury is relaxing on a holographic beach. This is reminiscent of Agent Coulson's implanted memories of vacationing in Tahiti, memories designed to suppress the experience of being resurrected by Fury's pet program, Project Tahiti, after the events of the first Avengers movie. This may be the closest we ever get to seeing the MCU movies reference the events of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Even the idea that Fury would rely on trickery and deception to make people believe he's somewhere he's not has a long history in the comics. Generally, Fury doesn't rely on Skrulls, as they tend to be much more villainous in the comics, but instead a series of android doppelgangers known as life model decoys. LMDs played a major role in an early season of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. While Far From Home doesn't feature many current MCU heroes, it does acknowledge the fallen dead from Infinity War and Endgame via the Midtown High memorial video. Though we know Cap isn't actually dead. The movie also includes name checks for several major characters, including Thor and Doctor Strange. There's even a literal name check in the form of Pepper Potts, who signed the oversized check Happy donates to May's charity. And finally, Happy finds out just how hard it is to be Captain America when he tries to throw a shield at one of Mysterio's drones. Speaking of May's charity, there is precedent in the comics for her taking on a key role in a New York-based charity effort. May once worked at a homeless shelter called Feast, at least until founder Martin Lee was revealed to be the crime lord Mr. Negative. Later on, May spearheaded the Ben Parker Foundation, named for her late husband and funded by Peter's brief tenure as a wealthy industrialist. Far From Home continues the MCU trend of sidestepping Peter's origin story and only obliquely referencing the murder of Uncle Ben and the lesson of power and responsibility. However, there is one subtle nod to Ben in the movie. Peter's suitcase sports the initials BFP for Benjamin Franklin Parker. Happy's choice of music on the plane ride to London is a clear callback to Tony's love of AC/DC in the Iron Man movies. Peter mistaking the band for Led Zeppelin is on brand for a teen hero who thinks of Aliens as a really old movie, and also possibly a reference to Led Zeppelin being used for the soundtrack in Thor Ragnarok. As much as Peter fights against the idea of becoming the next Tony Stark, one scene in the movie shows just how alike the two truly are. The shots of Peter interfacing with holographic controls and designing his new suit on board the plane directly call back to some of Tony's earliest efforts tinkering with the Iron Man armor. Now, this may be a stretch, but we can't help but wonder if Fury's mean-looking enforcer, Dimitri, is meant to be the same character who dons the Crimson Dynamo armor in the comics. Now, this incarnation of Crimson Dynamo is less overtly villainous than most who have tussled with Iron Man, and currently serves as a member of Russia's Avengers-like team, the Winter Guard. The ending of Far From Home pays tribute to the older pre-MCU Spider-Man movies, as Spidey and MJ soar through the Manhattan skyline. The twist this time is that MJ absolutely hates being taken along for the ride. This web-slinging sequence also calls back to the PS4 game, with Peter using the same spider selfie pose. As Peter swings up to meet MJ near the end of the movie, an advertisement can be seen in the background that reads 1, 2, 3, ? While obviously an ad for a Manhattan construction project, this seems to be a clear wink and nod from Marvel Studios to fans. It basically confirms another Spider-Man sequel is on the way, while also hinting that Peter's MCU storyline will be taking an even bigger and crazier turn after Phase 3. For more on Spider-Man Far From Home, check out our review and all the WTF questions we had after watching the movie. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.